see Samir as well. So, hi everyone. Welcome to this seminar on International Women's Day, Empowering Women in Afghanistan and the Way Forward. And I should perhaps say both good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, because I know we have participants and also audiences from different time zones. Currently here in Stockholm, where I am sitting, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're covered in 24 hours of snowstorm. So we're very happy that we still can arrange this seminar together. My name is Anna Ek, and I'm the country director for Swedish Committee for Afghanistan in Sweden.
Beautiful.
The Taliban now have been in power for 2.5 years, and the women and girls in Afghanistan have step by step been excluded from large parts of society. Is it possible to carry out work in support of girls' and women's rights in the current context? And what approaches are possible? What role can the international community play? These are some of the questions that we will address with our 4 distinguished guests. A warm welcome to all of you here today. And again, a warm welcome to all of you who are listening today. We will have a Q&A session in the end, but if you know that you will forget your question, you can write it in the Q&A box and we'll sort out that in the end. I think we might have possibilities of delaying 5 minutes or so if there are many questions, but we'll come to them in the end. But keep posting questions along the way. Let me present our great panel. Mahbouba Sarai, joining us from Kabul. You're a women's rights defender and founder of Afghan Women's Network, among many other experiences. From Kabul, we're also joined by Arzo Ehsan. You're senior human rights officer at, you're my colleague, at Swedish Committee for Afghanistan, based in Kabul. Usually also based in Kabul, but today participating from Canada, is Samira Sayed Rahman. And you're joining in from your holiday. So thank you for taking that time to participate today. You're the Director for Policy Advocacy and Communications at International Rescue Committee, IRC. I know that also in Canada we have Jamila Afghani. I think she will join us within shortly. I hope so. Jamila Afghani is an advocate for women's rights and education and representative of Afghanistan for Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, WILPF, which in Swedish would be IKFF. But Arzo, let me start by asking you, and we should mention that the electricity situation in Kabul is very hard. I know that you told us that your family might having dinner tonight in the dark because you're using your power bank for the Wi-Fi connection to be able to participate in this seminar. So apologies, and at the same time, thank you to you and your family. We appreciate the sacrifice. Arzo, can you please describe to us what life is today in Kabul as a young woman?
Thank you for letting me give a voice to women of my country, and thanks for this opportunity. Actually, here, millions of Afghan women and girls and Afghan families are facing problems without electricity and severe economic problems, and they have even worse conditions than me because I am employee of Swedish Committee and I have a monthly income, but there are families who are all unemployed and have much more difficult living conditions. I remember I joined the Swedish Committee 2 months ago, 2 months after the collapse of Afghanistan government in August 2021. And in conditions of fear and uncertainty, I went to the office with other women colleagues because I believed that everything would be fine, then the situation would improve. And I used to say that if we all will leave Afghanistan, then who will help the poor people, women and children, and they will all perish. But unfortunately, after a year and a half, we did not see any positive changes. Everyday hardship for Afghan women increased. We are banned from going to work, university, and school, and I have been working online from home for almost 3 months. I remember my sisters and I already had many plans for our future. I always wanted to have my own business and plan to employ other women through it. And I had a great sense of independence and I was sure that I would succeed. Before the collapse of government, I used to be able to easily go to the government offices and ministry and do my legal work by myself. But actually right now, I can't do this. But today the situation is different and I have to go with my companion. And also, I was preparing to get my drive license a month before the collapse of the government, but unfortunately, they did not allow me to get the license. Generally, during the last 2 years, most of my times spent at home, and I meet my friends and colleagues rarely because I do not feel safe outside of the house, or if I have to wear long black clothes and cover my face with a mask to go out. Actually, I don't like it because when you think that someone forced you to do this, it's not nice for me. So sometimes when we go out with my friends, for example, if we go to a restaurant, not only do I not feel safe and calm, rather when we go to the street and see how much people have become poor and how much begging has increased, it really breaks my heart. And some do not even have the ability to buy bread. So in this kind of situation, I don't like to eat lunch in a restaurant. And about the other women, it is much more difficult for women to travel without their companion in the provinces. And in Kabul, the situation is a little better, but still women in Kabul can't move around as easily as they did in the years before the fall of the government. And they are always stressed and anxious when they go out without their mahram, or I mean their companion, especially young women. Many Afghan women became widows during the wars. They are now the head of their family and there is no man in their family, and they face many economic problems to financially support their family. I remember 2 months ago, our neighbor's little son knocked our doors and asked for one bread, and they say we are hungry. I was shocked that I thought they have a normal life, but even they didn't one bread for eating. And my brother and my mother went and bought lots of food, oil for cooking, bread, meat, and some vegetables, rice, and something like that for them. So we heard the lots of this kind of real history that happened around us. So in general, I can say that women have faced many psychological problems, and they have even lost their self-confidence. In this situation continues, if this kind of situation continues like this, I'm sure Afghanistan will soon become the graveyard of the dreams of Afghan women and girls.
Thank you for that powerful testimony, Arso. Samira, I saw you were nodding and recognizing several of the examples that Arsa was giving. Afghanistan is currently facing a very severe and dire situation in terms of poverty and malnutrition levels, for example. And you have traveled quite a lot the last time, last year or so in Afghanistan while you were there. Can you describe what you have seen when you've been traveling around in provinces? Can you give some examples?
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. I've kind of lost my voice, so forgive me if it cracks up a bit. To echo what Arzu was saying, the situation inside the country has been worsening since August of last year. We've seen that an additional 6 million Afghans require humanitarian assistance today. And many of these are people who previously had jobs, were self-sufficient, had sources of income. But, sanctions meant to isolate the Taliban have not harmed those in power, but have harmed the 40 million Afghans instead. And it's women and girls that take the brunt of that. While all sides have been playing politics, it's ordinary Afghans that are suffering. They're forced to increasingly turn to, desperate coping mechanisms. And we've seen a rise in child marriage. We've seen a rise in child labor. Organ sales are rising. The proportion of people deploying crisis coping mechanisms is 54%, since June of this past year, 2022. That's 5 times higher than the pre-Taliban takeover numbers. You mentioned I've been traveling across the country over the course of this past year. I've been based in Afghanistan for over 8 years now. I've never seen more malnourished babies in hospitals. I've never seen as many people lined up outside the bakeries in Kabul begging for bread. You travel to remote parts of the country, areas that we never had access to before. I've traveled all across Helmand province, for example. These are parts of the country that were inaccessible due to violence. But now that we are able to go into these areas, you really do see this, just how grave the humanitarian situation is across the country. This winter has been one of the worst winters in Afghan history. People have had to choose between food and heating. I'm in Canada right now, it's minus something and there's snow piled up, and you're in Sweden. When we're able to survive these winters because we have access to heating, because we have access to resources. Imagine not having that basics of 4 walls around you, a heating source, and at the same time struggling to put a meal on the table. And that's the decision that most Afghans have had to make this winter. These international sanctions, funding restrictions, the world's attention turning to all these crises around, whether that's, most recently the devastating earthquake in Syria and Turkey, but before that, the war in Ukraine, have all had an impact on the humanitarian situation in the country. And like I said earlier, and Abdul echoed, so eloquently, it's women and girls that face the brunt of that.
Yeah. Thank you, Samira, to you too, for helping us understand what life actually is, giving a more human face to the challenges that women and girls of Afghanistan actually have. I believe Jamila has joined us. Welcome, Jamila Afghani from Canada too. Coincidence. You're from Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, and you work with women's rights defenders. Can you help us understand briefly what's the current state for the possibility for women's rights defenders to actually operate in Afghanistan currently?
And thank you very much for having me today here with all of you, and my greetings to all of you, and congratulations on the celebration of 8 March, and thanking you to bring us together in this important day to discuss the important issue of Afghan girls and women facing in Afghanistan. Well, my comments or my presentation won't be different from what my two other colleagues earlier mentioned. Unfortunately, the situation is worse. It's out of words to explain it. Just I will focus on the issue of how we, as a human rights defenders and women activists, are facing difficulty while doing our services to provide help for the needy girls and women. Unfortunately, after the ban of December, which has put restriction on the presence of women employees in the NGOs and international organization, it has given has very hard hit, and mostly our colleagues are unable to go to office, and mostly we are working through online system. And occasionally, maybe once a week, one or two of the colleagues are going to office to do some of the activities, very just like stealing or just like hiding, like with this environment. At the same time, you can see that the demand from the bottom of the society is increasing. A lot of our sisters, friends, members, partners are connecting us. WILPF Afghanistan is a membership organization, women support women membership organization. We have around 10,000 members from across the country, and we are engaged in multi-layer of activity. And then you become just like shocked how to reach to all these demands. Believe me, I'm living here in Canada. On daily basis, I get more than 1,000 messages on daily basis. When I open my eyes and open my mobile, you can see more than 900, 1,000 messages are coming. And majority of these requests are about the issue of child marriage, that families are unable to feed their children. They are selling their children in the name of marriage. Forced marriage issues are coming, and more than all, the psychosocial condition of Afghan girls and women. I was having some interviews yesterday with some of young girls, and I was really shocked to see that how much the hit was hard on the psychosocial well-being of Afghan girls and women. We may recover the poverty, we may recover the physical harms, we may recover financial issues, but it's totally huge time consuming to repair this psychosocial setback Afghan girls and women have faced or we are facing. It is almost demoralizing them. It is almost devaluing them. And the sense of motivation and innovation is dying in them. So we are trying our best to be connected with our sisters and our friends through virtual means. The money, like previously we were providing for their transportation or whatever, now we are trying to top up their mobile cards and to have some means of connectivity with each other. But overall, it's very difficult. I will echo the sentence of one of my sisters earlier mentioned, the sanction which was supposed to put condition or difficulty on Taliban. Contrary, it has hardly impacted the life of each and every Afghan, but not the life of Taliban. Taliban are getting stronger, they are getting richer every day, but Afghan people are getting poor and getting so many other difficulties on daily basis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamila. I will turn to you, Ahuba. In the last few months, we've seen women banned from, for example, universities and from working at NGOs. in your view, what does this signal about what we can expect for the future? Where does this say that Afghanistan is heading forward to?
Hello, everybody. My greetings to all and to you. To me, this is a very interesting question because I really don't know actually what the world really wants from Afghanistan and from Taliban and from us and women. What is it that they want? Where are they taking us? Because as a country, we don't have any more power to make a decision for ourselves. We are no longer there, so that's gone. As far as making decisions for our personal lives as women, that is also gone. We can't even go to a bathhouse here and wash ourselves. So, but at the same time, the world is watching, listening, and I really don't know where we are going and where all of this is going to go. The Taliban are not, as all of the sisters said, they are doing what they are doing. The sanctions are not really hurting the Taliban at all. The sanctions are actually hurting the Afghan people. The poverty is at the level right now that I really don't know what is going to be happening. So whatever it is, the situation of Afghanistan is getting from minute to minute to become an absolute, how shall I say? It's in other words, the world has to decide what they really want to do with us and what is really going to be happening, or something terrible is going to happen and we have no say about it. So I don't know if this is something that the world wants, or they're still waiting for Taliban to come up with something. Taliban are not going to come up with anything, because right now the schools, the universities have opened. I mean, not the schools, but universities have opened. So universities have opened, and the women are sitting like around by Kabul University on the ground, just showing that that's where they want to be. They want to be inside of that university, but they're sitting all of them outside on the street, on the side, and they're showing that they want to study. But this whole not understanding of what we really want is absolutely above and beyond me. I don't get it. I really don't get it. Which part of it is it that they do not understand? So this is where we are, and we are as people. We are kind of, the women of Afghanistan. We are. I wish we were a united group, that we could, with the diaspora and the women in Afghanistan, that we could decide, we could come up with some kind of a decision to make. Because if the world does not want to take the first step, maybe we can do that as women with the help of the world. But then again, amongst ourselves, we are not agreeing on anything either, because the whole thing of Afghanistan has become so political, and it's so political, and it's so divisive that I cannot tell you how. Right now, we don't see, any one of us, we don't see eye to eye. The second you mentioned something, either the name of I'm a Parsi one, which means that I'm a Parsi speaking person, or I'm a Pashtun, or I'm a this and I'm a that, comes up, and it never was something like this before. Before we all had our disagreements, but we were not split and these like the way we are right now. So this is not what is actually this is doing. This is not helping anybody, especially not us, the women, and specifically Afghans. Because this is the time that we have to get together. Taliban are not listening. So no matter what we say, they are not going to listen. In other words, Taliban are not going to sit down with the world and talk. So what was one of my hopes was that if we could sit down and talk with the world ourselves, but then even that is becoming impossible, because now we cannot get along, all of us amongst ourselves. So we can sit down and see what we can do. just give it a try, because right now we are really between a rock and a hard place. So we really don't know what to do. So because we are squeezed so badly,
Seems like we lost our connection with Mahbouba. I see the rest of you are still moving, so it's not me.
I couldn't be in the meeting because of the fact that it was so. Afghanistan has no cover. Afghanistan has no how shall I say, no leader, no the country doesn't belong to anybody. Does it's a completely how shall I say, a country that is not. It's one of the most disheartening and one of the saddest thing I have ever seen in my life. Suddenly that country of Afghanistan, the country that I loved so much and I still do, is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. So what are we going to do about this? What is the world going to do about it before we completely become we don't exist on the map of the world? Is that what it is? I don't know.
Yeah.
So at this point, really, what I really want to know is that where the world is going to take us from here on. Because this was not a decision that was made by us. So this was a decision made by the world. And that's why I keep on calling on the world. You know, what do you want?
Yeah.
And I also want to call on my sisters. What is it that we want to do? You know, what is it? Where are we on this? Where are we? We are still split. We are still in 500 pieces. And we are still, wondering which one of us is a Farsi speaking and which one of us is a Pashto speaking person. Is that what is going to decide the future of Afghanistan? Which I think at some point it will. And that is going to be when Afghanistan is going to be in 5 different pieces, and each piece will belong to a country. Because don't forget, we have some of the nastiest neighbors on the face of the earth around us. Nasty. Nasty Pakistan, nasty Iran, nasty China, nasty Russia, and nasty all of the Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and all of the states. Nasty. They are not interested in keeping Afghanistan alive or in one piece or successful. Not at all. Not at all. So it's either in our hands, and the only voice right now raised in Afghanistan, or the voice of women. So that's why I keep on calling on women. The only voice raised is the voice of the women of Afghanistan. And that's why it is so important that we should get together and we should be of one voice and we should decide for the sake of Afghanistan.
That's why we are arranging this seminar today, to finding paths and
that's right.
Possible ways to cooperate and support each other on the way forward.
Because otherwise it won't happen. Exactly. So we have to find it. We have to. We have, there's a saying in Farsi that says the knife has reached the bone. So the knife is really reached the bone. So we don't have any more place. We don't have any more anything to do. Not really. And at this point, to tell you the honest truth, I really don't care what the Taliban are thinking or what they are saying, because what they are thinking, what they are saying, it's so negative that it is negative and will be negative and always is negative. I mean, in some of our projects, we are asking them that we have these projects at 5 provinces of Afghanistan, and we want to work with women and families, some psychosocial. You know, what is their answer? They look at us and say, well, Muslims don't need psychosocial. It's like, excuse me, what are you talking about? What do you mean Muslims don't need psychosocial? It's like Muslims don't need doctors because Muslims are not supposed to get sick. This is what it is in reality. Because how can a Muslim head get confused and sick in the same, how come a Muslim body gets sick? Because Muslims don't do that. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But that's where we are. That's where we are. And then, so we have to do something. We really have to do something. And I keep on asking my sisters. I keep on wanting to talk to them. I keep on putting this question in the middle and asking, and nothing happens. Nothing happens.
Yeah, but that's great, Mahbouba. We need to let the others in as well. So you need to wrap up. We have short time. Sorry. I understand that it's a very challenging situation for all of you, and that you are all, including women outside of this seminar, trying to find ways to cooperate and strengthen each other forward. And I mean, we're all here in this together and trying to find a way forward. Samira, I wanted to turn to you. Because IRC have been working since 1988, I think, in Afghanistan. And the current ban towards women working, for example, within the healthcare sector, how is that ban affecting the staff and the beneficiaries of the IRC?
Sure. Thank you for that. Yeah, so we've been working in Afghanistan since 1988 through different governments, different challenges. The ban of December 24th really, hindered our ability to deliver services across the country. We have women working at all levels of our organization. There's generally, this misconception that women are only frontline workers when it comes to NGOs. But we have deputy country directors that are women. We have managers that are women. It's impossible for us to implement our activities without our female staff. Since then, we have received some exemptions in a few sectors, including, as you mentioned, health, education, and some other sectors as well, depending on the provinces. A ban such as this, really limits our abilities to reach female beneficiaries. We're all aware how conservative Afghanistan is. Women do not interact in many parts of this country with men outside of their families. Arzul mentioned earlier the number of women-headed households in this country. It's a country that has faced 40 years of war. You have many widows. You have many female-headed households because men have left for economic migration purposes, leaving behind women and girls. Those women and girls are unable to access aid if there are no women working on the other side of it. If you don't have frontline workers who are female, if you don't have females involved in assessments, in monitoring, in protection during our implementation of programs, it makes it that much more difficult to access those most vulnerable in the country.
Yeah, I fully understand the challenge. We see a lot of similarities as well. Also, I wanted to turn to you because, in about 2 weeks' time, the school year is supposed to resume again after Nowruz. And we know that large parts of girls' right to education from grade 7 and above has been limited. It's been practically banned. How would you say that this fact and the schools closures are affecting girls and women in Afghanistan? You have to turn on your mic. Let me see if I can unmute you. No.
Okay.
Ah, there you go.
Okay. Sorry.
No worries.
Actually, there is a lot of frustration among the youth. Unfortunately, since there are no accurate statistics, no one can provide accurate figures on how many young people suffer from psychological problems about this kind of issues, about the ban of university and schools. We hear reports that suicides are increasing. And if I tell you about my mental state, I have been taken to the emergency department of the hospital by my family members several times in the last 2 months. The last time was last week when they took me to the hospital at early in the morning, and the doctor, who already knew me and remembered my face, asked me what you were forbidden from doing, from studying or from going to work. I said with tears in my eye, Afghan women were forbidden from everything. even living. And the doctor said that during this week, several patients have been brought to the emergency department in the same condition. Actually, they didn't have physical problems, but they were under such pressure psychologically that they passed out and felt they couldn't breathe properly. Imagine that you live in a country that in a country where other people make a decision for the way you dress, the way you live, the way you speak, the way you marry, the way you study, and the way you work just because of your gender. You should not even be allowed to leave the country, or you cannot get a passport or even visa because we are condemned to continue living in this prison. Can it be more terrible than this? When you are aware of all your rights, but you cannot access them, and you have to live like a slave, not the way you want to live, but the way others dictate to you. It is terrible.
What do you wish that the international community would do to support you or to try to contribute to a change?
Actually, we need real actions, take real actions from international community sides. It's about 2 years that some small groups in Kabul or out of Afghanistan, the Afghan women try to raise Afghan voice, but we didn't see any positive changes. Afghan women need real action from international community sides. We need just this, just real action.
Yeah. Jamila, you about a year and a half ago, there was a meeting in Oslo. Norway has been engaged for several years with diplomatic efforts together with the Taliban leadership even before they took power. And there was a meeting, I think it was about a year and a half ago in Oslo. And I know among several, you were one of the participants from civil society at the same meeting. Did it make any difference to engage with the Taliban? What do you think? Does the world need to change its strategy ahead? What are your views on that?
Thank you for this important question. Yeah, I was in Oslo gathering when Taliban delegation visited Oslo. So that time, to be honest, like Taliban leaders, as previously, they were giving a lot of hope. That time, Mr. Muttaqi was 100% sure that schools would be open, because it was also December, I think it was almost December, and he was giving the promise that the school will be reopened in March. Unfortunately, it didn't turn back with his promises. When the day I heard that the schools were banned on girls on the March last year, so out of very frustration and out of hunger, I started writing a letter to Mr. Muttaqi. And I was trying to ask him that who you are, from which people you were presenting, and why there is such a big gap between saying and actions. You're telling to the international community, to Afghan people, that you keep the promises of giving the rights for Afghan girls and women according to Islamic Sharia and Afghan culture. Forget about international norms. But where are those rights? The right of education, which is the very, very basic right in Islamic Sharia and Afghan culture, why it is taken away from Afghan girls and women. Unfortunately, to be honest, after passages of this almost 2 years, I'm becoming more disappointed. I'm becoming more hopeless that the situation won't be changed from the side of Taliban. Taliban are behaving just like kidnappers who was taken hostage, a bunch of people in order to pursue their wishes on the international community. And those hostages are Afghan girls and women, that they are using them as a bargaining chip to the international community to gain some of their political gains. But I'm really disappointed that how an Afghan man or Afghan man-dominated mindset and tribal life structure allow to a man to use women as a bargaining chip. This is against Afghan tradition. This is against Afghan dignity and honor. But we have been used. And I'm really disappointed. I 100% agreed with Mahbouba Jan that Taliban are not going to change. We, as a nation of this country, as a half portion of this country, we need to think what can be the solution. Even as you know, CSW is going on. There are so many meetings in Geneva, in New York, so many people are attending them. My say to United Nations was like, what is the use of your presence in Afghanistan when the situation of Afghan girls and women are not changing? Why international community is giving us false and wrong hope if they are not doing anything? Why women and humanitarian issues are used as a bargaining chip? When we are talking about humanitarian aid, how 50% of the population can get access to the humanitarian aid?
Yeah.
As Samira was mentioning, Afghanistan is a traditional tribal country. How women can be able to go out and ask for help? People are dying in their home. Their mothers are watching gradual death of their children, and they are not able to do this. This is a dilemma. This is a catastrophe, and world is watching this. The game of sanctions, the game of diplomatic dialogues behind the closed doors without involving Afghan in these dialogues, this has totally flopped and failed. Let's be honest with each other. Let's be honest with each other. Let's start serious conversation, not only among Afghan, but also among Afghan and international community about Afghan and different factions and Taliban. Taliban are reality on the ground. With ignoring them or just to say, no, we don't want them, just kick them out, this is illogical. This is not going to happen. Now they have power, now they have weapon, now they have grip on income taxes, now they are escorting $40 million on weekly basis, which is coming for humanitarian aid. So now they are guarding those monies, for God's sake. We have to use our logic. There is need of sincerity, there is need of honesty to deal with the situation with the honesty, with dignity. So these wrong methods and wrong policies is putting 40 million people at the verge of death. And who will be responsible for this?
Yeah, I think women's rights are a bargaining chip from many sides, not only in Afghanistan, but also, I mean, an important aspect of from the donor community too. So yes, I fully agree and understand that in a sense, Afghan women are stuck in between.
If
Absolutely.
I may, if may I
Yeah,
add,
just very shortly. We have
very
short
shortly.
time.
And now some of the donors and friends are reaching out to me, and they are saying that because of the ban of Taliban on women NGOs and international NGOs, so we are trying to minimize our funding on Afghanistan. I said, for God's sake, you're a Talib with the tie and suits. You're doing the same thing as the Taliban are doing. You're hitting women harder than the Taliban. So these are a small means of surviving. These are a small means of living, or at least to keep hope that something may happen. You're killing all those. So this was what I wanted to say, like, yeah, many layers. If we dipping deep down and going and investigating, we find many other layers of such a chaotic and such a bad policies implication on the life of Afghan girls and women by different actors on regional, national, and international level.
Yeah. Samira, I'd like to ask you, did you see from the communities that you meet in your daily work, did you see that priorities differ among women? I mean, in terms of age, in terms of where they live, rural or urban areas, where in the country, perhaps? I mean, can you give us a brief understanding of your impressions?
Sure. I think at this point, for most women across this country, particularly in the rural areas, but increasingly in urban areas, it's basic survival. With the crippled economy, with the lack of employment, not only for women, but also for men, it's basic survival. Food, access to cash, access to a basic livelihood seems to be the major priority. Of course, with the worsening economy, the worsening humanitarian situation, again, it's women and girls that are facing the brunt of that. Many women have been pushed out. Those who were working have been pushed out of workplaces, whether it's due to restrictions from the authorities, but also, there are no restrictions on the private sector, but we've seen more and more women becoming unemployed in the private sector because of the status of the economy. Women's inability to access aid, when food supplies decrease, it's women and girls that are eating last. Basic survival is, the main demand for most people on the ground. Beyond that, to echo some of what the other colleagues were saying on the call, there's also this gap between what the priorities of those inside the country are and those who have been outside and are advocating on behalf of those in the country. We've seen over the course of this year that there's been a misrepresentation of many of the women who continue to live and work and operate and survive every day despite the restrictions that have been put in place. There's been a great disservice done to women like Arzul, who are here, who are there. I'm outside right now. Who are working and have been struggling and pushing and trying to carve out that space for the 40 million people inside the country. Nobody is going to evacuate 40 million Afghans. We have to try to find a solution for those who remain inside the country. And to echo what the other speakers were saying, there's a confusion between, or a misconception between some of our advocates and human rights defenders and activists. There's a misconception between engagement and collaboration. Those are two very different things. The current political situation in the country is a reality. Dialogue with those who are in power is a necessity for those living inside Afghanistan. Whether you're trying to work, whether you're trying to live, whether you're trying to run a business, whether you're trying to provide aid, you need to engage with the authorities. women inside Afghanistan, whether it's, dialogue, protest is a form of engagement. It's a recognition that this is the reality. So we need to have those dialogues. We need to have those conversations. You can't expect things to change if we're yelling in a vacuum outside of Afghanistan.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder, Samira. Mahbouba, time is running so fast. So many important differing views in some sense also to listen to. But Mahbouba, what would you say? You've been living back and forth in Afghanistan almost all your life, and you've been through quite some challenging times before, seen challenging times before. What would you say, or what would you like to say to those that are losing hope currently, also still living in Kabul? What do you say? What do you tell your sisters when they are losing hope? Do you want to share some examples
honestly,
with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I cannot lose hope. But the reason why I cannot lose hope is because I'm in charge of the lives of 63 women right now with their children in my shelter. How can I lose?
It seems we're experiencing some unfortunately bad Wi-Fi connection.
I cannot do that, because these families are families that they left, their provinces in the beginning, and they still haven't been able to. Some of the families I was looking after, they left Afghanistan, they were evacuated, but these people are still here. And some of them are, and two of them especially, are in absolute dire need of getting out. So I cannot lose hope. And for that, I keep on working. I keep on working, I keep on talking, and I keep on working. But at the same time, like today, I celebrated the Women's Day with my girls at the shelter. And you should have seen them. You should have really seen them. That there is so much hope. There is so much courage and resilience in these women. I cannot lose hope. I really cannot.
No.
So that's what makes me extremely mad and extremely disappointed when I see that the world is not taking us as seriously as they should.
Yeah. And I think, we're sorry, Mahbouba, we're struggling with capturing your Wi-Fi. But yeah, I think we got the message through. Losing hope is not an alternative. And I think that's a good reminder to all of us. Also, all of us working from outside of Afghanistan, we need to find ways to support each other. I'm sorry, you have your mic muted, but we need to start wrapping up as well. But Jamila, just shortly, one question to you. Like women in Canada or Sweden or wherever that wants to support women of Afghanistan, what is your best recommendations? What can they do, or what can we do from here?
The best recommendation will be to really listening to those who are living inside the country.
Absolutely.
We are outside Afghanistan. We are doing in different countries with different stakeholders, different strategy for advocacy, which is bringing the life of Afghan women and more difficulties who are living inside the country. And continuously, I get this message from my sisters from inside Afghanistan that do the advocacy according to our needs and our demands, according to our priorities. So this is very important that we should listen to those who are living inside Afghanistan, facing the first-hand experience dealing with the Taliban. We need to listen to them. They should be at the top priority of all of us. And I echo again the voices of Ms. Mahbouba Jan that we all are in need of coming together to become united and putting our differences aside and jointly focus on the voices of those who are in need of survival, to support them, to help them to have access to food and to basic needs of life, and to physical and mental peace of mind.
Are there any, I see we have some questions. I promise we will take some of them in the end, questions from the audience. And while I have you here, Jamila, are there any platforms for women inside the country where they can cooperate to discuss these kind of like issues? Do you know of any?
Yeah. Fortunately, there are a lot of movement going down on the ground. So just I was telling some in a few other maybe earlier interviews that according to a scientific formula, every action is creating reaction, but in the opposite direction. All these bans, all these restriction on the women has increased the pressure for women to have opposite direction with the bigger movement. And one of the movement which is going to be launched in the near future, that is Afghan Women Leaders Coordination Umbrella. That is an umbrella that we have more than 300 Afghan women leaders from inside Afghanistan and a few women leaders from outside Afghanistan, just to facilitate their work, just to connect them with the world community. They're working in 8 different committees like education, health, private sector, and religious, and some other areas. And this is giving me the hope that these women with this much energy and enthusiasm and professionalism, expertise that they have, they are coming, giving the solution. Like believe me, I was really surprised. I'm a person who's working on the ground for 25 years, past 25 years. But I never seen such enthusiasm, such a professional, committed girls and women from inside Afghanistan, that they are ready to bring change, even at the cost of their life. Everything is there. They need helping hand, honest helping hand from us outside Afghanistan and also from international community. So the ground is paved. The groups are coming together under this umbrella and some other platforms that I hear, and I'm almost part of them in a way or other way. Yes, as I said, we have to be honest, we have to be strategic, we have to be logical to deal with the realities on the ground. We cannot think that we will find that magician stick to say, Taliban, go away, and everything will change. No, we have to become realistic, not idealistic, and we have to deal with the situation. And the best solution is coming from people from inside Afghanistan.
Thank you, Jamila. Another question we got from our audience is, I guess anyone that feels that they want to give an answer can do that. I mean, it's one thing what the international community can or cannot do with the de facto authorities, the Taliban, that are leading the country today. But will the Afghan people accept a continued deterioration of the situation? What do you think? Does anyone want to answer that? Will the Afghan people accept this slippery slope and worsening scenario that we are seeing ahead of us?
Maybe I should jump in. Nobody's talking.
If you want to, sure.
My very first recommendation, even from the first day of Taliban takeover, but nobody is listening. I will repeat it again. If international community gives the funding, support, humanitarian aid, or whatever, on the condition of 50% reach out to Afghan women. This will give us leverage. This will give a position to Afghan women because the economic situation is very bad. And Taliban are also saying that men and women should be segregated. And so this is a way that they can use and say, okay, we are segregating men from women. So 50% of the donation and humanitarian aid should go to women groups, women organizations, that they should be in the position to help and serve Afghan women on the ground who are in need. So this will give us leverage and give us position, and due to bad economic situation, Taliban will also will be obliged to think it. But it should have been done from the beginning, from the first day. In the very first days, everybody was very loose, everybody was very easy. So everybody was going, now Taliban have become hard and hard and hard because everybody in front of them were very, very smooth. Now what we can do? Still we can use this leverage and also going through very serious communication. NATO and USA is responsible for the big mass they did in Afghanistan. We need to bring them on the table. They have created this mass without consulting, without considering people of Afghanistan. And now they have to step in and now they have to handle the situation. And I'm sure in a way or other way, Taliban will listen to them because they are the party who signed the agreement with the Taliban. And we don't know what are the content of that agreement, but they know what was the content of that agreement, and they should deal with the situation honestly and sincerely. And I don't know, as a human being, how a person can sleep when the other person is dying. Like my sister Aruzojan was talking about the story of one of her neighbor. How the international community call themselves civilized nation, respecting human rights, human dignity, and they are witness that Afghan people are dying. How a conscious person can do? Believe me, that it's really difficult to take a bite of food here, living in Canada, when you're thinking that my family, my relatives, my colleagues are in a very bad situation. So yeah, this is important that we all as a human beings, wherever and whatever, Islamic scholars, religious scholars, everybody has to join hand together. Aid organization, community organization, they have to come together. We have to stop this nonsense, this wrong policies.
Yeah. Thank you, Jamila. I see we have a couple of more questions, but we also promised that we would wrap up around this time. But from SCA side, the questions that we have received, it's also an indication for us what people want to hear more about. So we will have more topics we will have a reason to meet again. So I think we started by asking you, Arzo, to describe what is the daily life for a young woman in Kabul. And if I would ask you to answer the last question, what message would you like to send to the outside world from the women of Afghanistan?
Actually, my message to the world is that Afghan women are officially and systematically held hostage and victimized by politics as always. We have raised our voice for about 2 years, but no one listens to us. And even our problems have gradually become normal for the world. Afghanistan has become the graveyard of our dreams. Here, half of the society is forgotten just because of their gender. Afghan women need serious actions from the international community sides. And I'm afraid that one day it will be too late for the next generation of Afghan women to grow up in this darkness. And if one day they are allowed to fly towards their dreams, they have no dreams and no wings to fly to reach their highest human point they deserve. And women who forgot their values and rights definitely cannot raise a useful generation for their society. So the Afghan woman needs real and serious actions from international community sides.
Thank you so much for that, Arzo. And sad to say that we need to wrap up for today, but really a good reason to meet again soon, I think, to continue the discussion. There were so many proposals, so many important testimonies, ideas of needed cooperation and support ahead. And I am sure that all people in the audience listening have also received a lot of new food for thought and have a better understanding of what life is in Afghanistan today for girls and women. So thank you so much, Arzo, Samira, Jamila, Mahbouba, for taking your time to participate today. And I hope to see you again soon somewhere. And thanks to all listening in as well. That's it for this seminar today. Thank you.
Thank you. And I also have one thing to say, that don't take too much time in order to have the next meeting. We don't have that kind of time in Afghanistan. We really don't. So if there is anything that's supposed to be happening, let's make it happen.
Yeah, otherwise, sure. Don't wait for us.
No, we don't. We can't wait, because it's 18 months already.
Yeah. I bet everyone is capable of organizing a meeting or seminar too. Yeah, thank you for reminding us, Mahbouba.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone, and stay in touch with each other.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.